I want to share something with the panel. I'm in contract, and we were supposed to close a liquor store, and I thought this was very interesting, and basically got to tested my patience to the limit. This deal took almost, let's see, actually over a year to close. But part of the reason, I'll try to make a long story short. I think it's interesting. I'll just share it because I think it's relevant. So I represent the buyer in buying a liquor store in San Mateo County. So it's a off sale. It's a 21. So then when we were entertaining and making an offer, the I realized that the property was also for sale, and I'm like, oh, interesting. So then I engage with the listing side. So there's an agent that's representing the liquor store. That's the seller's broker. And then there's a different set of brokers that are selling the land, the property, right? So then we try to structure a deal. So we made two offers. One is to buy the liquor store, and then the other offer is to buy the land, buy the property. So we closed on the property maybe 6 months earlier. So we become the landlord now, and yet we're going through the process of taking over the liquor store. So that's a different escrow, as everyone knows. And so what happened was we were supposed to close escrow in May of 2025. And what happens? The seller gets a violation for selling alcohol to a minor.
Oh, wow.
So she gets basically violation and suspension, right? So all that kind of follows with ABC. And that dragged on for another 6 months because they had to investigate and this and that. So here we are in February of 2026. We haven't closed yet. So it's just been dragging on, and that's actually one case that kind of put me, tested my limits to the max, and that's one of the reasons I'm trying to pivot out of business brokering is because it's just too much.
Mm.
I got one, two, three. I got three parties on my side, which is my client group, and then I have the seller side, which is a broker that I'm dealing with, and then everyone is not is just very anxious, trying to make the deal work and trying to close. But then one thing after another, it just comes up, and then we just keep on stalling, and then they threatened to get attorneys involved and back and forth. I'm like, no, that's the last thing anyone wants to do or think about is get the attorneys involved because we know what happens when we get attorneys involved. So I managed to talk to the group and said, fine, we're going to leave the attorneys out and we'll just try to solve the problem and settle it, right? So finally, now we're down to, because I'll be honest, this is my first liquor store. I have not sold a liquor store before. So I didn't
First
realize
and last, right?
first and last, really. I don't want to sell a liquor store. And then I'll just share. It was like 175,000 for the liquor store. And that's including the 21. And then there's inventory. So this is a completely new learning curve for me. And I'm very happy to share this with the group. And I'm sure maybe some of you have more experience. So the seller is claiming $90,000 worth of inventory, and it's a very, very small store. I would say maybe 1,000 square feet at most. So it's a very small store. And she says, absolutely, there's 90,000. And then my group is like, there's probably, at most 50,000. But it's okay. We went along, we put 90,000 in escrow, and that dragged on for more than 6 months because of the ABC violation. So now we finally got inventory people out scheduled for next week to come and do the inventory. So one thing I wanted to share was I didn't realize that the inventory, there is certain percentages in each and every category. And that's something you have to negotiate, which I didn't know. I learned that. So apparently liquor is the common, I guess, percentage is 30%. But then my group wanted to negotiate a higher percentage on liquor because they're saying their retail price is much higher than what the normal cost are, or for the other stores. So the 35% that we're negotiating is off of the retail. So that's the value that the buyer will end up paying for. We would reconcile in escrow. So, and then food is like 30%. So all different categories, and then beer and wine is I think 30 or 28%. So beer and wine, that's a different percentage. And then there's also tobacco. Tobacco, they had agreed to just set at cost. So whatever they paid, that's what the price we would pay. And then there's also expired stuff, right? If it's broken, if it's expired, that all that is not included. I mean, it's reasonable. I mean, it's obvious, but that was in the contract. And then there's also stuff like wine, a white wine, that if it's been sitting on the shelf or if it has a vintage longer than 3 years, that's not included in the contract. That's something they specifically, wanted me to put that in the contract. But if it's red wine, they argued and said, oh, if it's 5 years, if it's beyond 5 years, we don't want to buy it. I go, wait, vintage red wines, the longer the shop, the longer the vintage, the more valuable the wine should be. That's my thinking. They're like, no, not in a liquor store because the wines are generally a more mainstream quality, not your opus ones or
Yeah.
your high quality. So that I didn't realize either. I didn't know. So finally, we got that on the contract, and then now we're negotiating, and hopefully they would agree, and then we can finally close. So this is my liquor store story I wanted to share with everyone. And
Brian? Ricky, I gotta
And then,
say, I loved your story, and the inventory and the way you all chose to handle inventory. I've never heard anything so convoluted in my life.
yeah,
Generally speaking, inventory is just done at cost, period.
yeah,
And
but
like you're
it
doing
costs
with the tobacco, yeah, it's inventory at cost, and it makes it easy because it's like, give me your purchase orders, or give me, your inventory reports or whatever, depending on what they're using to track inventory, if anything. But you can generally, it makes it a lot easier than trying to say, oh, well, this is going to be 35% off of retail, and because who sets retail? I mean, retail is just retail. Anybody can
exactly.
say, somebody can set retail at 550, and somebody else can set the same products retail at 325. So
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That was my point.
no, inventory at cost, generally speaking, and that's typically what's in your cap forms, is it's inventory at cost. Now you can always write an addendum to it and change it if buyer and seller agree. And I think the best lesson in that entire story is what it tells us about basic contract law. Anything the parties agree to, they have free will. They can agree to anything they want, and we just need to make sure it's written up correctly per their agreement. But other than that, just because there is some type of a standard contract or a standard way, that standard doesn't mean anything, right? Anybody,
There's no standard.
between buyer and seller, they can agree to anything that floats their boat, anything that makes them happy.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.